Okay, good morning. Welcome to everyone to the second day of Social Innovation Campus. On behalf of the Fondazione Triulza and of Arexpo, I welcome you for this panel in the second day of our campus. The focus of our panel today is Community Park. Community Park, green infrastructure for engagement and regeneration. As many of you probably already know, MIND Milano Innovation District is the new innovation district which is growing in the place where the Expo 2015 was held. 1 million square meters, very well connected to the country and to the city of Milan. A key element of the new project of this district is specifically the green area. Almost enough of the total area of 1 million square meters will be dedicated to a huge green park with several different facilities inside, but also as elements in order to drive the community of the new district. This is why it's particularly interesting for us today to see other case history which are for some aspects similar to ours, but which have also significant characteristics and features which could be inspiring for us. And so the panel is the opportunity for us to share experience and model with three very relevant case history in managing, designing, and developing green areas, green urban areas. So I only remember that Arexpo is the state-owned company which is in some sense the director of this big project, with the key cooperation of Lendlease as private partner and the University of Milan, La Statale, the Research Center Human Technopole, and the Galeazzi Hospital. For us, a key role is also playing Fondazione Triulza, because Fondazione Triulza is for us, in some sense, the driver in order to develop a social model of innovation. So, model of social innovation for a new form of city. So, let's start immediately with the first case, and I ask to bring the floor to Selina Maison. Selina Maison is the director of master planning at Lendlease, and she will present and illustrate for us the Elephant Park project in London. Selina, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to go into presentation mode, but I gather, yes, here we go. Right, so I'll be talking about Elephant Park in London. This is a project that we've been doing now for about 10 years. We're working in partnership here with Southwark Council. So like Arexpo, we're a joint venture partner, in effect, with the public sector. So it's a private and public partnership to deliver a regenerated part of central London. And for those of you who don't know where the location is, you can see on the map here in London, Elephant Park is on the south side of the river, and it's remarkably close to all of the sights and sounds of central London. So you can see that it's not very far to the west. You find yourself in Westminster across the river, Houses of Parliament. A little bit further north, Covent Garden, and then City of London. We're kind of in the epicenter, if you like, of both Westminster and the City of London. So it's remarkably well located, but kind of underperforms in terms of its socioeconomic standing within the city. Since the Second World War it was very badly damaged during the war. A lot of social regeneration happened immediately after the war, and there have been difficulties thereafter with a lot of social infrastructure not properly in place for a community to thrive. So since the 1990s, turn of the century, there's been a lot of regeneration going on in this part of London, and the Elephant Park is an important part of that. It's a master planned development, so we've been building it out now over the last 10 years. This is a drawing that shows the completed sections of the master plan. So the park, you'll see Elephant Park itself is in the middle, with a series of buildings around it. The greyed out areas are the parts of the park that we've yet to complete. Those mostly are on site now or about to go on site. So I expect we're going to be finished in about 4 years. We'll be finished completely. 50% of the master plan is landscape, and that was an important part of the deal with the local authority. They were it was very important to them that the public realm was a really central part of this park. But as you can expect, over the years, it has evolved. We've been doing a lot of work to make adjustments to it and to support the park and create a place which people will enjoy, and it will support their activities in the city centre. So this is a pavilion. I'll show you a little bit more about that later on. And the completed park, this is the master plan that shows the completion as estimated to be 2026. So we've learned 3 things over the course of delivering this project. Embrace change. Master plans are delivered over a long, long time. The market changes, customer habits change, and indeed those delivery organizations, they change their aspirations too. So we've learned that you don't, once your plan is in place, don't expect it to be the same forever. You really do need to make the adjustment. You need to be tuned in to what's happening out there and be prepared to make changes. We also, not surprisingly, you learn that customer is king. The people that use your park and use your public realm and use your buildings are the ones that really understand it best, and you really need to listen to them. And collaboration. These are complicated projects. They involve multiple players, lots of different agents, agencies, people, contractors, developers, councillors. There's a lot of people involved, and you need to collaborate effectively with them to make sure you can deliver the best you can. So if we look back into the original master plan, this is the planning consent that we got in 2013, which looks very similar, I think, to the park that we're now delivering. But there were some fundamental changes in that, and I'll go through that in the next few slides about how things have adjusted. But predominantly, I think our relationship with the community has changed. Their attitude towards the park has changed, and therefore the conversation with them has changed. And that's affected our plans and how we are building out the project. For those of you who don't know, this is how it looked in 2013. And you can see the site. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is our site. This is the station, and you can see up at the top there is the wheel. This is Westminster up here, Covent Garden, and then the City of London is further off the screen. So this was a piece of post-war redevelopment. It's called the Haygate Estate. It was filled in the middle with relatively low-rise residential buildings and this wall of higher-rise buildings around the edge of the site that created impenetrable barriers across the site. People who came here arrived at the station. You couldn't really get in here. You would walk down the Walworth Road or the old New Kent Road, and you didn't walk in here. It was a very sort of exclusive, difficult environment to get into. There was a lot of social problems as a result of that. And so the council decided that it needed to remove these buildings and regenerate the area, rehouse the residents here, and rebuild a place that was much better connected, that had green space at the heart of it, but would create a much more socially accessible, more integrated, more diverse community. And so this is the master plan that came. So the Haygate Estate, these blocks were around the edge here. In the centre, now what you noticed, actually, if I go back, what you notice here is that a lot of the area has these mature plane trees, which the community was very, very dedicated to. And the original master plan intended to remove those trees, but we had to, one of our first adjustments in the master plan was in response to a strong community demand to keep the trees, we had to reorganize the master plan to keep as many of these big existing trees as possible. One of the other things that we did, this plan showed a street here, which was for cars and vehicles to access. That was one of the early changes as well. By thinking carefully about how these two buildings were serviced, we could avoid cars going onto this street here and next to the park. Because we wanted to deliver a better environment for people, less traffic, better air quality, a better relationship between the buildings and the park. The idea of removing the street from this, removing cars from the master plan was an important part of how we adjusted and our thinking. And so we managed to get these cars off here. A lot of difficult conversations to make that happen. It was not easy. We could easily have given up, but we decided you have to follow your instincts. And if they're telling you to do something like create better connections between the park and the buildings, then you have to have those difficult conversations. You have to make it happen. So we eventually managed to persuade all parties that that was the right thing to do. So this was an early CGI of what that might look like, but you can see it's still quite kind of hard landscaped. It doesn't feel particularly connected to the park. There's still sort of remnants of a sense of cars being able to journey along there. So we pushed harder, saying actually the character of this place is about the park. We really do need to get the park to meet the buildings and create something that feels more park-like along this street. So you can see we pushed the designers to change their thinking from very hard and sort of fierce edge to the park to something that's a little bit more relaxed, bringing green space and biodiversity up against the buildings and creating something that feels much more relaxed and more like a park promenade than a street next to a park. And so this is now the latest CGI of this. And actually, we've built a lot of this out. This summer, I expect we'll be seeing, we've started to get retailers into these spaces beneath the buildings. And so this summer, this is a west-facing edge. The sun will be shining in here in London over the summertime. So we expect this to be a very active and exciting place to be. We've also made changes to things like the pavilion. This was a little cafe. We thought, hang on a minute, a lot of the community here, we need to find places for them to hang out where they don't have to pay £3-4 for a cup of coffee. How about thinking about creating a pavilion that's all about the community, somewhere people can gather together. This is about a community hub. It's not actually about paying money. We're building it around one of the existing trees. Again, to really reinforce the idea of people coming together in the park and really enjoying those mature trees in the center of the park. So that's another change that we made. We also introduced commercial space. So H1 here is going to be an office. Again, thinking kind of carefully about creating a place that's going to be vibrant throughout the day. So with office workers there, as well as a lot of residents, you get activity throughout the day. Which is an important part of creating a strong, regenerated part of London where there's a lot of activity and people feel safe throughout the day. Because a lot of those issues we were dealing with very early on were about personal safety. So that's one of the conversations we've been repeatedly having with the community is how do you create places that are safe, feel comfortable. So this is all around just some ideas around how that's going to work. I know I've got to quickly get through all this. Some images here of how this is starting to come together and look. We've been working very closely, as I said, with the community, often talking to them. Last summer or 2 summers ago, we had a conversation with them about the park. They wanted it to be much more open and something they could be proud of, something that other people in London would come to. So we started to talk to them about a play space. This is the play space. It's full of Italian porphyry.
This is a physical connection with our country.
It is.
Yes,
We worked really hard with the porphyry quarry in Italy to make sure, because this is for children. So we needed to work very closely with the quarry so that we could get the right kind of stone and the right sort of shapes to make it safe. We worked really hard on this. This is the completed project last summer. It was a huge success. and is really drawing people to the park from way beyond the immediate community. And a lot of the people using it are local children. So from a place they were excluded from, this is really a central part of the local community now. So we work closely, obviously, with the designer looking at this, worked with a safety organization to make sure it was going to be safe for the community. And those are the final comments there. So that was really about embracing change, making it an open place, listening to people and collaborating to get that delivered. The latest image of the park. And I'll just take you through quickly some of the latest images. Biodiversity, also an important part, not just people, biodiversity as well. Okay.
So thank you, Selina. Really fascinating. So it's impressive. It has also, particularly from your words, emerges like it's a process. This kind of design is a challenging process. But I think that we can back to this point in the question time. So now let's move to Moscow, to Ottavia Franzini, which is project director at Land, Italia. And she will illustrate the Rublyovo-Arkhangelskoye Smart City Park. I hope that I pronounced the name. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hi, thank you. I hope you can see my screen. So I'm going to talk to you about a very special project that we're involved in Moscow. And I'm proud to say that we've been involved for a very long time, since 2013, when we won the competition for the urban master plan of this very large area of almost 460 hectares. And why is this project very special to us? The very special character of this is that we consider landscape to come first in every single step of the way. So first, in terms of the importance of the landscape environment where we started to work with, this area is along a bend of the Moscow River, where, as you can see, is framed from all the way north to east and south by this riverine environment. First, in terms of priority that was given to the landscape component during the master planning phase. So you will see that the structure of the city itself has been shaped by the elements of landscape. And first, in terms of anticipation of the landscape construction compared to the building construction. So you will see that from the construction timeline of the city as we go through the presentation. So I will just say RA because I'm not the very best Russian speaker. So in taking up the challenges of transforming this very large piece of brownfield, we considered, first of all, the location. That is the most important key element of the design. So as I said, the site is located almost at 17 kilometers from the city center, but it's in a very sensitive environment along the river. So let me see. So the river itself here represents a unique occasion for a development which is very well connected to its surroundings. As you can see, the area is a former quarrying site, but of course, over the years, the nature has come back to it and has developed a very, very fascinating environment here. So let me just go through this. So just to go quickly to what the master plan at the moment looks like. So this is like a large year along a bend of the Moscow River, and it's located right outside the Moscow Ring Road. So it's a very connected areas, which is large, as it's 460 hectares as a complete area. But as you can see already here, the landscape areas, the parks, the boulevards, and the public realm in general occupies a very large portion of it. The parks cover almost 150 hectares. we are now developing a green boulevard that connects and frames the center of the city. And so far, we've been able to implement in the design almost 7,500 trees, just to give you some numbers. And these are the design pillars that kind of guided the design phase from the very first moment. So the idea that landscape should come first in terms of importance, in terms of extension, but also in terms of implementation during the construction phase. Of course, the idea that we are working along the river, so the approach to the design should start from there. And since the goal is to develop a smart city, of course, the urban landscape and the landscape in general should somehow approach the design on the same side, so becoming a smart urban landscape. So this is just a CGI to show what the environment of the river looks like. So Moscow River is very low in this part of the city, so it's not a rushing water coming through the side, and it frames totally the areas. When I said that landscape is structuring, so it's shaping the new city from the very beginning, is, as you can see here from the very early sketch of the master plan, that the green and blue infrastructure, so the water bodies together with the green areas, are deeply rooted into the layout of the city. So they become design pillars, and they connect the river and the river park that is now located along it to the very center of the city. So the river becomes the backbone of the structure, but also but the green infrastructure and the blue infrastructure, they kind of extend to the inner part of this new community. So getting into the detail of what now is the focus of our design are those three layers. Of course, we are talking about public realm in all its characters. So a lot of squares and a lot of public spaces at very different scales located at the center of the city, in the center of the neighborhoods, that overlaps to the streetscapes that is also considered a part of the green infrastructure. So most of the streets are becoming green boulevard. We are giving space to a lot of public spaces and art areas and functional areas for the kids and in general for the community to enjoy. And of course, the structure given by the parks and the river park itself. So we have a goal at Land to design with nature in every project, of course, that we develop. And here are just some of the images that we are developing for the project, getting into the details of what it may look like. We brought together, of course, large green areas, dense woodland, water features, functional spaces, art installation. That's all gonna, be there when we will be able to see it built. Of course, talking about approach and green infrastructure, we consider the implementation of nature-based solution that we wanted to both include during the urban development, so in terms of large infrastructure, but also in the dialogue with the architects in order to implement them in the buildings. So of course, the concept itself behind the parks is to bring back and connect to the Russian urban forests. So the idea of urban forestry, the extension of green spaces is deeply rooted in the concept. It's nothing completely new. And of course, the idea that the NBS could include a lot of benefits was part of the dialogue with the client, and it was debated at length. The benefits, also economical benefits, that of course these NBS can bring to the city in long term. These are some numbers that we have included so far in the project. So a lot of trees, a lot of path and sports circuits, a lot of functional areas for the community from kids to elderly. These are, again, some images.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I've been...
It's very great. Now, what is really interesting is also as dimensions, so similar to our cases in MIND. And you presented an earlier stage, in some sense, in relationship to the case of Elephant Park. This is very interesting because the message that you are giving us is that the land design, the green design, is a driver of the global design of the urban area. And this is really, really very interesting. I will be to you with a question in a few minutes, but before that, I would like to move to New York to our friend Matt Greenbaum. Good morning. We know that for you now we are approximately 4 o'clock in the morning, or something like that. So thank you for your very, very kind availability to be part in this panel. So Matt will illustrate and present probably the most known, best known case of Green Park, High Line in New York. Matt, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, and glad to be here. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the High Line today. For those of you that don't know, the High Line, it's in New York, in Manhattan. It's a 1.5 mile public park that is built on a disused rail line, and stretches from around Meatpacking District and finishes up at Hudson Yards. So it was completed. It first opened in 2009 and is still going through parts of completion now, and it roughly gets around 8 million visitors a year, which makes it the second most visited site in New York City, which is kind of amazing to think about how it started and how it got to here. So I'm going to talk about kind of 4 key points of what makes the High Line successful. I mean, the first one is the kind of ground up community to retain the structure and come up with the concept of putting a park up there. The community engagement during the design process and during the design iterations. The quality of design, and when we talk about quality of design, it's not just talking about quality of materials, but the quality of spaces. You know, you can design a park, or design a space, but you need to make it usable for visitors and the community to come and excite them and keep them there. And then the ongoing operations and management of the site. So first off, the High Line, as I mentioned, was a rail line stretched up the west side of Manhattan. In around the 60s, the train stopped running. Throughout the 80s and 90s, there was a strong push from developers to take it down. In around 99, a community group, the neighboring community group, formed what is called the Friends of the High Line, which is still there today and manages the project, to retain the structure. In 2001, the administration at the time was very forceful to remove the High Line and make way for development. But in 2002, the Friends of the High Line managed to win a court battle to retain and preserve the High Line structure, which is kind of amazing to think that happened from the community to be able to make such a drastic change against New York City government. And then in 2003, they released a design competition out to a lot of international interest. I think there were around 720 entrants on the competition. Everything you can see here on the images, everything from a roller coaster to a lengthy lap pool. But thankfully, we were able to win James Corner Field Operations along with DSR Architects. And so we were commissioned for the project in 2003. Once we were brought on, there was a lot of heavy community engagement, and community engagement happens on multiple levels. And I wanted to show this. This was an exhibition at Grand Central, and you know, this was almost the first point of engagement, was to make everyone aware of the project and that there could be a park up there. So this was a simple exhibition at Grand Central. We did a number of community outreach presentations where we would show iterations of the design. The community will come and be able to either write down or voice their opinions on things. And we were able to take those comments away and integrate it into the design and form and change the design throughout the whole design process. We even did smaller scale community outreach where we would take small groups up to the High Line, kind of get them excited about the project. I mean, this was, this is a rail line sits 30 feet above the air. So the only people that could really see what it was up there were the people in the apartment buildings adjacent. So it was really exciting to bring up various groups of the community or the neighborhood groups up to the High Line to get them excited about what was actually going on up there. We did other small events like seed collecting of the wildflowers that are up on the High Line. We did small building events with kids from around the local neighborhoods. And even to the scale of having block parties, again, bringing in awareness, getting excitement, and allowing a variety of community groups to comment and have their input on the design process. So the next important thing is actually the quality of the design. So this was a really, really early concept, I think even pre-competition that we had. And we really loved the wild nature of the existing quality of what was up there, this kind of found landscape. So our first idea was to simply collage a pathway on top of this wild landscape. And this was one of the early images of that. And it's almost very true that collage, which was the first concept, still holds true today to setting up this vocabulary and language of the design. We have these concrete planks that kind of finger into the planting and allow the planting to take over moments. The other important aspect is the planting design. So, we worked with Pete Udoff from the Netherlands on composing the landscape. We looked for a lot of seasonal quality. So again, adding interest up there for visitors throughout the year. So if you come up in summertime, it looks very different to if you come up in wintertime. It looks very different to if you come up in spring or in fall. The other thing the planting we've tried to do is add a lot of ecology and biodiversity to really, add into the pollinators and wildlife throughout Manhattan and New York. Other important aspects of designing social spaces. These are really large, hefty benches. Some are actually on rail tracks, so you can move them closer or further apart. If you want to be with your group, you can move it closer. If you don't like your group, you can actually just move it apart and sit by yourself. But setting up these moments through design that allow people to interact and socialize in various ways. Allowing people to get up higher to look out to views. This is a bench that looks out over to the Hudson. Other moments where people can take their shoes off, get their feet wet. We have a little play space that we actually cut into the High Line, exposing the beams, which have some really cool tunnels so kids can get in and really explore the structure of the High Line. And then even more dramatic scenes. This is the 10th Avenue Square. So this is a large amphitheater that steps down and the glass windows look out to 10th Avenue. So you kind of get this spectacle of the street below, of the crazy New York taxis honking to the people walking to and from restaurants. But also it's the spectacle of the High Line above. I mean, one of the challenges initially on the design was, how are you going to get people up there? How are you going to get them excited about the space that's 30 feet up in the air and 30 feet above the street? And it's having these moments like this where you have the spectacle of people up on the High Line. So when you're on the street, it looks like there's something public above and it draws people up there. And then making sure the entrances are dramatic, generous, and welcoming. This is the Gansevoort entrance. It's a cut through the High Line, and it's a sequence of stepping up. You're not just getting people from point A to point B. You're giving them an experience on the journey up to the High Line. And then the last point is the importance of just ongoing programming and management of the High Line. Friends of the High Line that I mentioned that boarded the inception of the High Line still do a lot of programming. This was a really, really cool event that happened, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, which was called the Mile Long Opera. So they invited opera singers from various opera groups around all of New York City to line up the High Line at night, and you could walk for the whole length of the High Line and hear this amazing opera opera vocals as you step through. There's also other events they hold, like little food events, food sharing events up there. There's movie cinemas. There's even fashion shows, dance events. They invite dance groups from local neighborhoods or around New York. This was actually really interesting. This is a lady that lived adjacent to the High Line, and she would step out onto her fire escape and sing opera to the people walking past. So this was something that wasn't programmed, but it was just her by nature of wanting to sing opera to the people walking past. We even had a Lego building event up on the High Line. And then this last layer of just adding in artwork, and this is on multiple scales, from very large to very small, from local artists to international artists. But again, the importance of this constant programming and change up on the High Line. So those that live close or those that are multiple visitors get a change of not just seasonal change in the planting, but the artwork, the program. It's very energized and active throughout the year. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. It's really, really impressive to see how this is in one of the biggest cities of the world, a very really bottom-up project. So a sort of project of freedom in some sense. Natural freedom with the wild trees which impose themselves to the attention of the people, and on the other side to the participation of the community. Really, that is really, really impressive for us. So we have only several minutes in order to give a new round to the table, and I would like to start again with Selina with one question on your case. Well, was interesting. I mentioned before this process, which is a long process, which is not so easy to be managed. My question for you is, which was the most difficult challenge that you had to face, and how did you manage it?
Wow, that's a tricky one, because I think there are multiple challenges actually throughout the project. I think, to be honest, the biggest challenge is really on collaboration across the board, both with internally within our own development business, but also and with our contractors, but also more broadly with stakeholders like the Highways Authority and the landowner, Southwark Council, but also fundamentally the community. You know, there's a kind of ripple effect of different collaborative conversations that need to take place, and they never stop. I think it's one of the biggest challenges, I think, is being able to keep the momentum, being able to constantly refresh the conversation and focus on what needs to be delivered and how people can influence that, and being prepared to always change your plans if the conversation is changing. So the play space that I showed you towards the end of the presentation was something that came in very late in the day. When we were first talking to the community right at the beginning, they had just left a very enclosed part of London. They didn't want to share their park with anybody. They wanted it delivered for them. Once we delivered the park and it started to become used, they started to fall in love with it. They started to want to share it. And the conversation that we had with them changed. They then wanted to celebrate it and let other people see it. So that new piece of play that came in, the water fountains, was very much as a result of a new conversation we had with the community when they were saying, actually, we want to show this place off. We want everyone else in London to share it with us. And so being prepared to adjust your plans, I think, is probably a big challenge actually for many people. You kind of you do get onto a bit of a railway track, if you like, and it's just get on with it. But you need to be able to flex and be agile and listen. And if you listen hard enough, then you can flex, you can change and adapt.
You are saying that listening is so crucial in order to keep, but it's not a function that you manage at the beginning, but
all the way through.
All the way you have to keep this dimension open. This is
exactly
crucial. I think it's really very interesting. And I would ask to Ottavia, you are an earlier stage of your project, and which is the next important step according to you, particularly on this aspect to be connected with the growing urban district? Because I think that at the moment there are not people living there, no, in the area. So,
No, not yet.
which will be the bridge to the people coming? Have you designed something for that specifically?
Yeah, we need, of course, to consider that this large area will have a development that will last a very long time. So I didn't make it to that part of the presentation, but of course, while developing what will be the final layout, the final dimension of green spaces for the residents and the new community that is going to settle there, we are at the same time considering the meanwhile use of those areas while the building site will be on. So we developed many proposals for temporary landscapes that are very, in some sense, are very extensive because the areas are so large. But so they represent a way to design rural areas, so basically, but they are very connected to the uses and the experience that the people that will start living there, or they will visit, or they will come visiting from the neighborhood around the site. So those meanwhile uses will be both for residents and for visitor itself. So the idea that the site will start living in these two timelines. One is the final one, and the other one is kind of accompanies the development of it. So the connection between those two time levels and is almost as hard as connecting the entire network of public spaces that we are designing. So those, I think, is our main task at the moment.
Okay, so two different communities too, in sense the living there, and also like Selina said, this could be also challenging, no, for the future.
Yeah,
but
it will be once the site is open, and I think while now we're at the very first phase of the construction, then it will start to open up a little bit more, and we hope to involve the community of the surroundings more.
Great. So, and Matt, for you, a question about probably for us in this moment, in this panel, is the crucial question that we have. The question is about governance. Because what is really fascinating in the Highland Park case is this participation of the community. How do you keep it managed in sense, which is the governance, which is the owner of the actions, and which is the arbiter, to say, in the community in order to keep this alive, free, but also ordered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it comes back to the Friends of the Highline. They're very well organized. You know, they've very much changed from what they were from that ground up to now. They're quite a big organization. They own, manage, and maintain the park. They do fundraising. They work with the Parks Department, who also has a very close eye on what happens with the park. But the importance of getting a strong grounding, strong organization to continue on to manage and keep the operations going of the park is really important. And it's something we hem on with a lot of our clients. It's, you can get the design right, you can get the community engagement right, but if you don't get the ongoing management right and don't have the right funding, everything can fall apart pretty quickly. So yeah, I would put it down to the success of Friends of the Highline.
And this is correct that all the funds you need are coming from liberal grants.
Not everything. No, there's some government funding.
Okay.
There's some funding from philanthropy, and there's also funding from there's negotiations with neighboring developments. So, for example, they might get a higher FAR and they might fund a staircase for the Highline. So there's multiple ways of getting funding, and that's another important piece of it. Not just from one source or relying on government funding.
Okay. So I thank you really, all of you, really, for your contributions and the presentations. You, of course, what I can say at the end, that we hope to welcome you in our green park in Mind. But in order to do that, we have to wait a couple of years because we are at the very early stage of our project. But this is why we are particularly grateful to you. We will follow your cases, and we hope that we can keep in touch in order to share our experience in waiting to welcome you here in person in Milan. Thank you so much to everyone, and thank you for the audience. Have a good day with the other panels of the campus.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Bye
good
bye.
day. Bye.